So, with all the moves that happened for the Eastern Conference this past offseason, a lot of teams are going to come back next season a lot better, and some teams that missed the NBA playoffs before or just were bottom of the playoffs before are going to come back probably being some of the top seeds. With all that being said, people have been making speculations about which two teams may miss the NBA playoffs out of the core 10 playoff level teams in the Eastern Conference, and a lot of people have been pointing to either the Atlanta Hawks, Chicago Bulls, or the Toronto Raptors to be the two of the unlucky teams that may miss it. The Chicago Bulls, obviously, with Lonzo Ball being out and them not truly making any major additions to their team, it kind of looks a little bit grim for them. And with the Atlanta Hawks, it's just a simple fact of fit between DeJounte Murray and Trae Young and what else this team may bring and how much some of their younger players can improve to see if they can actually make the playoffs next year. But the Toronto Raptors, I don't get that one. And it seems like as the years have gone on, people just simply have not learned not to doubt this Toronto Raptors team. Last season, they were projected to win 35 games and miss the NBA playoffs. They won 48 and they were the 5th seed. It's not that hard to not doubt this team. A lot of people were kind of on the fence about that Scottie Barnes pick as high as he was. And what do you know, he comes in and he's one of the best young players in the entire NBA. It's not hard to realize that you shouldn't doubt this team, and the talent and coaching and continuity of this roster can be enough to win a lot of games in the NBA. And while they didn't make any additions to really make you fall out of your seat, and they still have some of the problems that they had last year, I still see this Toronto Raptors team with some of the young players that can improve going to next year, and the way that they're built and how unique this team is. I definitely see them as a playoff team going into next year, maybe a 7th seed or an 8th seed, but definitely a playoff roster. But if with me saying a 7th and 8th seed, there's a high possibility that this team can surprise a lot of people and be even higher, depending on the development of a Scottie Barnes and a Precious Achiuwa, and the continuity, and if Pascal Siakam can make any more improvements into his game. Can OG Anunoby be healthy for a full season, and is the size on this roster, or the lack of size on this roster, can be ignored for a 2nd year in a row and then still be successful? Those are the questions you should be asking, but questioning if they can be a playoff team is a little bit asinine in my eyes. But one of the major reasons why I believe in the Toronto Raptors team is something that I've said multiple times already in this video, and it's just how uniquely this team is built. Wings everywhere, switchable guys. The most sought after position right now in the entire NBA is that wing position. Somebody that can guard multiple positions while also still being a competent offensive player, but most of the times they're relegated as a catch and shoot 3-point shooter, and they can get some buckets here and there. This team has a multitude of those players: Gary Trent Jr., Precious Achiuwa, Scottie Barnes, OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam. All these guys fit under that lane, and right now the entire NBA is starting after players just like this. There's a reason why guys like Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby get paid as much as they do, even though they aren't all-stars. Is because you don't find the skill set or how well they actually play their role the same way you do over the entire NBA. And going into next year with what could be a superstar level player in Scottie Barnes, you have the development of somebody like Precious Achiuwa in his offensive bag, but his defensive versatility. You have somebody like Gary Trent Jr. that is one of the better 3-and-D players in the league. You have Pascal Siakam, where you question if he's either hit his peak or just how much better can he get. You have an all-star guard in Fred VanVleet. We're going to get into some of the problems a little bit later, but this team is definitely looking good. Going next year, they're one of the youngest teams in the NBA, and they're going to be very, very good. They only have one player on this roster that's played double-digit seasons in the entire NBA. Well, I guess you can say 2. Otto Porter's at 9. But still, now with me praising this team and how ahead of schedule they are in their rebuild, how good they are already, is great. But this team also still has its issues. You have their issue with size. There's nobody on this team that's above the height of 6'10". Well, there's one guy in their rookie in Christian Koloko. I probably said that horribly, but he's the only one on this team that's above 6'10". And recently in the NBA playoffs, with Fred VanVleet going down, it kind of exposed a lot of the things with this team, and the fact that they don't have another primary ball handler or a secondary ball handler. I understand that guys like Scottie Barnes, Pascal Siakam, and OG Anunoby can handle the ball, and in Scottie Barnes' case, he's very developed as a playmaker already. Even with being how young as he is, he's still not ready for a full-time playmaker role, and this team needs another one. And when somebody like DeJounte Murray was on the trade list, I really was hoping that this may be one of the places he would go because he fits so well in this team's defensive scheme, but also as a secondary ball handler for this squad. And I'm not gonna lie, the three-point shooting is a very large problem on this team. The moment Fred VanVleet went out, their offense completely almost collapsed, and they really couldn't get shots off at all, or they didn't get any substantial spacing because the 76ers didn't respect anybody on the court that could shoot, not even Gary Trent Jr., who's a 38% shooter, and that's because he in himself is extremely streaky. 36 games last year, he shot above 35% from 3 in a game, and then 34 games he shot below it. It's it's very, very apparent that this team only has, well, one reliable three-point shooter that can consistently hit in majority of games in the season. And we're not saying that guys like Precious Achiuwa that showed some touch from out there, OG Anunoby that could play a full season finally, and guys like Scottie Barnes, whose jump shot is still developing, can't become that guy. But I'm just going off what I see from the previous year, and three-point shooting is definitely a problem on this roster. And they didn't really add anybody substantial that really fit the bill to become a primary three-point shooter on this team. But even with all that being said, this team, in my eyes, is still one of the best young teams in the NBA. You have Gary Trent Jr., who was cut from the same cloth as a J.R. Smith, Jordan Clarkson, Dion Waiters, in a sense that he can miss 30 shots in a row. He's coming down court and he's taking that motherfucker again. There's one thing you cannot say about him is that he's scared to shoot.
Which is why he's one of the players I would love to have on my Underdog Fantasy team.
I'd like to talk about today's sponsors being Underdog Fantasy. And Underdog Fantasy is the best place to play fantasy sports as of right now, and they have their double dribble tournament going on for the 2022-2023 NBA season already. You just draft your players, and overall the grand prize is about $200,000, or it's a prize pool, and you can make out with more money than you put in by being up to 2,000th place. It's only a $25 entry fee, and if you use code FLB as of right now, you get $100 matched up to your first deposit. So if you wanted to get into fantasy sports, Underdog Fantasy is the best place to go. So hit the link in the description and use code FLB for $100 matched on your first deposit. And thank you to Underdog Sports for sponsoring this video. And you like that confidence in anybody, because when he does get hot, he has games where he goes 8 for 11, 6 for 8, 9 for 15. But then you have things on the other side where there's games where he can go 5 for 15, 3 for 10, 2 for 10, 3 for 15. These are things that can happen when you have somebody that has that type of confidence in himself, but that confidence can only be a positive sometimes whenever he does get hot. You have OG Anunoby that you would expect some all-star jump in the past, let's say 2 to 3 seasons from him. He didn't get it because, again, he's very, very injury prone. And this team, the way this team has been built, he's kind of never really been handed the keys to become such a substantial offensive player on this team. You had Kyle Lowry and Pascal Siakam or Fred VanVleet getting that right. You had Kawhi here at one point, and then this season he wasn't healthy, and then you have somebody like Scottie Barnes coming, showing the promise he has, and Scottie Barnes is going to be the #1 option on this team next year. So, or Pascal Siakam is going to be #1, and Scottie Barnes is going to be a #2. So again, it's another season where he's not going to get the amazing offensive role that I probably thinks he does want. But again, the three-point shooting, two-way play, and he's a very adept scorer. It's more than you can ask for from somebody like him, especially when he's not in a position to be a primary offensive option. You have Precious Achiuwa, who last season surprised me a lot in his ball handling ability, how well he can score from multiple spots on the floor, still has some three-point shooting touch, and his versatility on defense regarding multiple positions. And while I don't like the fact that he's probably going to have to guard a lot of 5s this year, still, he's a havoc on the defensive end, and he's very good in staying in front of his man. And he's really good coming from weak side to contest shots and sometimes get blocks. Overall, great young player to have on this team. Then you have, again, the superstar potential of Scottie Barnes, who I honestly can't rave about enough. The size, the length, defensive versatility, the ever-opening offensive bag. He has a nice little mid-range jumper there. And while his three-point shooting does need to get better, he still has time and room to grow in that area. His ball handling can only get better, and it's already good at the level it is right now. He's a above average playmaker for his position already as a rookie. Last season, going into this year, I expect probably some jumps from him, but I don't expect the superstar jump, or we get to see really if he can become a superstar until probably like next season. So you have him. Pascal Siakam, I think he probably peaked at where he is. I don't think Pascal can get much better than he already is. But again, the way he is right now is an all-star level 4. so you can't really ask much more from him. Fred VanVleet, again, a great piece on this team, but I do think Fred VanVleet and Pascal Siakam, when this team does decide to make that full cut to go completely young, they're gonna fetch this team a nice price. But overall, I love the continuity of this roster. I love how young they are. I love just how hard they play. I love the way this team is built, in the fact that they have multiple wings that they can throw in multiple positions and be disruptive all throughout the entire game. And you have Nick Nurse, the perfect coach, who's very unorthodox in the way he does coach, that can kind of find ways for this team to work that we didn't even think possible. So overall, I do expect this team to be a playoff team next year. I expect an all-star jump from Scotty Barnes next year. And overall, this team, I think we need to stop thinking that this team probably is going to miss the playoffs. I do think they're going to be one of the best teams for years to come, giving them a little bit of time to develop. But with that being said, this is FLB. That's my time, and I'm out.